Market report coming up right now. What's in store for us today?
Well, fertilizer, of all things, a little bit unusual, making headlines. That'll be one of our stories coming up. I'll explain. Also ahead in the markets, it appears to be a familiar cycle for grain prices this fall. In the dairy industry, there is too much milk, while cattle prices take a sharp drop from only a year ago. Well, the retail prices of all major fertilizers have turned south, but two in particular are now at 8-year lows, this according to the website for DTN. Potash is now priced at $319 per ton on average, while urea has an average price of $323 a ton. Well, if you're wondering how to handle marketing grain between now and the end of the year, there's an 84-year cycle at play. Trader Sue Martin explains what she sees ahead.
I could see the market holding a little better right now and maybe moving up into October, maybe November, and then we turn down as we go towards the end of the year and roll the year over as farmers are working with bankers, getting their year-end books lined up and whatever. I think farmers start to move some grain to pay off some bills and what have you.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, that maybe gives us incentive to turn around and drop right back down as we roll the year over.
Time for our trivia quiz on Farm Week. You know, soybeans are an ingredient used to make crayons, and that brings us to our question this week. How many crayons will 1 acre of soybeans produce? Is the answer over 39,000 or close to 56,000, or could it even top 82,000? Then again, the choice might be over 97,000. You have to decide, and you follow us for that answer here coming up in a moment. The dairy and milk market suffered a little pullback in the closing weeks of September. Analyst Naomi Bloom is not sure where the bottom is for prices because of all the milk that's out there.
Potentially, it could have a little further to go. It continues to be the same story where supply is so humongous and there is not a supply issue at all. The demand has picked up in the export front, and then we are finally competitive in price compared to Oceania. So that has been what has been supporting our exports. But again, with the dollar moving around and all of those types of things, looking at milk prices probably in the bigger picture here to stay between 16 and 17. But if any signs of that demand in the export market, if any of that demand goes away, prices really could fall pretty quick. So you have to watch that real close.
Large numbers in the monthly on-feed report are not helping halt the downward spiral in cattle prices. Extension's Brian Williams outlined the situation for me. Did the latest cattle on feed numbers match the trade expectations?
Well, they were some pretty big numbers, but they were real close to expectations. Just kind of running through the numbers real quick. We had about 1.879 million head placed on feed. That was a just over 15% increase from a year ago. Cattle marketed was 1.868 million head. And that was a 17.6% increase from a year ago. And then total number on feed was up about 1.5% from a year ago.
So it sounds like cattle supplies are very strong. Does this have the trade in a nervous panic?
Well, the numbers were, again, really pretty large numbers. But the thing that we have to keep in mind when looking at this report is that this year we had 2 extra trading days, 2 extra business days compared to a year ago. So that just kind of artificially inflated those numbers compared to a year ago to begin with. But it was still larger even if you took that into account. So it's the markets have been kind of on a downward trend, but I don't think it's completely because of that. There's some other problems. For example, a lot of cattle coming out of feedlot and going to the packers, and the packers can't handle that quantity of cattle, so that's also kind of playing into the markets right now as well.
Can you compare the prices somewhat, say, to a year ago to now?
Yeah, so last week, 550-pound steer in Mississippi was selling for about $113 per hundredweight. A year ago, it was $175, so we're down about $62 compared to a year ago, so a pretty sharp drop.
And what kind of spin-off do those prices have, say, on the feeder cattle?
Well, so the whole cattle complex, with the exception of boxed beef, is really struggling right now, and has been for the last couple of weeks. We've seen feeder cattle prices down sharply. We've seen fed cattle prices down sharply. So it's just kind of all around really struggling right now.
And how big a deal is China's announcement about lifting the ban on U.S. beef imports?
Well, it's always good when we have more doors open up for exports, but it really hasn't had too much of an impact. A couple things kind of play in here. First of all, we've got, it'll take a while to get all the details worked out. And second of all, I think we're seeing some U.S. beef kind of slip into China anyway through other avenues. So it just might be more direct now.
We return to answer the trivia quiz on Farm Week and wrap things up in the markets. The answer this week is C. 1 acre of soybeans will produce over 82,000 crayons.